Hello everyone, and welcome back to Turkish series stars. All the whispers, all the turns and tremors in today's story are right here. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss the most stirring tales from the world you love. Now, let's step into a narrative that has once again stirred the heart of Turkish entertainment, a love people can't stop talking about, a bond that seems to be wrestling with time, fame, and the weight of 1,000 expectations. This is about Barış Arduç and Elçin Sangu, a pair whose chemistry once lit up sets and screens, and whose private world has become the loudest conversation in the room. For weeks, timelines and tabloids have been a chorus of speculation. Photos from public appearances were examined like clues from a mystery, his gaze somewhere else, her smile softer than usual, both walking past cameras with the careful distance of two people balancing on separate edges. Commentators drew the same conclusion over and over again: their marriage was slipping away. Everyone waited for the formal announcement, the message that would land with a thud and end the guessing. But when those murmurs sharpened into talk of papers and signatures, a twist stopped everything. Industry insiders say that when the decision arrived at her door, Elçin wouldn't sign. She didn't slam a door, didn't perform for headlines, but she drew a quiet line that left the room in stunned silence. Some branded it pride, others called it nostalgia, and many insisted it was love. Those who know her beyond the photographs described something deeper, a firm, calm strength. She wasn't pretending nothing had changed. She simply refused to treat a story that had once been sacred as if it were disposable. In a world where breakups are retold with memes and vanished with a swipe, she resisted the idea that all of it could be erased with ink on paper. Her decision wasn't about clutching the shards. It was about honoring the crystal those shards once were. Their beginning was the kind of spark people swear is only written in scripts. On a set surrounded by glaring lamps, moving cameras, relentless calls for quiet, they found a private wavelength in all the commotion. He was in a radiant season of his career, booked solid, admired widely, framed by the glow of non-stop success. She, on the other hand, was stepping out of a difficult chapter, piecing herself together after a stretch that had scraped her raw. What started as co-stars playing scenes transformed slowly into something truer when the day's final cut echoed. In the lull of shared coffees and the hush of hallway breaks, they learned the language of each other's silences. Between rehearsals and laughter that slipped past midnight, they discovered a shelter. That's why, when cracks formed, she didn't treat them like proof of an ending. She saw them as riddles to solve, a test placed between them by the grind of fame, the long drives home in the pre-dawn dark, and the public's endless appetite for explanation. She believed their trouble didn't grow from the absence of love, but from its exhaustion, its muscle worn down by schedules, distance, and the noise that comes with living beneath a magnifying glass. To her, he wasn't just the man in the glossy photos, the name that filled a theater. He was the one who had found her hand in a dark corridor and held it without asking questions. How could a signature negate that? How could a just legal line undo the night his words steadied her breath? Criticism came fast. Comment sections declared she was clinging to a shadow. Opinion columns rolled out sincere advice about letting go in dignity. Yet voices closer to her heart said something different. They said she wasn't afraid of solitude, she had stood inside it and learned how to breathe there. She feared, instead, the kind of forgetting that erases the proof of who we were at our most open. She didn't mistake the present. She simply refused to disrespect the past. The more everyone else shouted, the quieter she became. She didn't toss darts on social media, didn't insert herself into the frenzy. That quiet wasn't surrender. It was poise. She chose not to perform her pain. She chose to speak only where words mattered, to herself, to the pages of a journal, perhaps to a friend across a kitchen table. In that hush, she began to mend. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a makeover montage. It moved like dawn, so gradual you only noticed its arrival when the light finally touched the floor. Meanwhile, Barış was at every event the calendar demanded. He smiled when the flashes popped, posed with the ease of someone who has learned how to carry fame without letting it burn him. Yet his smile didn't travel far. It landed on his face like a polite guest, never making it home to his eyes. Whenever a reporter shaped her name with their mouth, something in him paused, so slight the cameras would miss it, so strong he could feel it tug. Pride said to continue, to consider life a succession of doors. But there was a quieter part, stubborn and tender, that told him the door he wanted had never truly closed. There were evenings when the applause faded and loneliness sounded like a radio left on in a distant room. He would scroll without reading, type without sending, wake in the dark to the memory of a conversation they'd almost finished and never did. Success glimmered, but behind it he could see a hollow shape. It followed him through corridors and across red carpets, a reminder that sometimes you are the last person to understand what your heart has been trying to tell you. She kept moving too. She worked, read scripts, accepted new challenges, and showed up for friends who needed her laughter more than they knew. When she smiled again, people wondered if she had forgotten. She hadn't. She had accepted what she could not control and made room for what she could. Calm, for her, was not the absence of feelings, it was the ability to carry them without spilling. That serenity said more than any press statement could. Love, she seemed to be saying, doesn't always require words. Sometimes it's the silence that holds all the meaning. Time, the usual villain of love stories, chose a different role. It didn't crush what remained. It clarified it. Because nothing leaves a mark like someone who refuses to chase you and still refuses to stop caring. The steadiness of her presence, never loud, never pleading, echoed in him like a melody that drifts in and out of range but never really fades. Days turned, projects wrapped, and then, as if scheduled by a script with a mischievous writer, fate stepped in. One afternoon, at a production office where meetings run like trains and stories are traded across tables, their paths crossed. No staged photo call, no press line. Just a doorway, a shared pause, and two people who once built a life out of the space between takes. The air tightened, the room thinned to just them. When their eyes met, time performed its oldest trick and slowed to a hush. She stood with a quiet strength, at peace in a way that needed no explanation. Something in him loosened, like a knot finally learning how to become a ribbon. In that brief span where the world held its breath, he understood, perhaps more clearly than he ever had, that she had never been the problem. She had been the harbor. You don't realize the meaning of a harbor until you've been too long at sea. There were no declarations, no cinematic sweep of music. There was only a shared stillness that told the truth. The proof of love is not the size of the gesture but the persistence of care after the storm. He saw it in her eyes, in the way she didn't accuse him with her silence. She saw it in the way he didn't defend himself with noise. What remained between them was stripped of spectacle and left with something simple. Maybe it was forgiveness. Maybe it was remembrance. Maybe it was the kind of tenderness that refuses to die just because people expect it to. The media is still waiting for a statement they can print in bold. Perhaps it will never come. Maybe this is one of those stories that refuses to be packaged neatly. Elçin does not owe anyone a guided tour through her heart. She has already made her point without holding up a sign. What is real does not need applause to be meaningful, and not every meaningful love promises a fairy tale ending. Sometimes the purpose of a chapter is the chapter itself. Their story, as it has been retold and reimagined by fans, has found a home far beyond Istanbul's skyline. Messages pour in from people who saw themselves in the patience she showed and the conflict he carried. Some call her a star for reasons that have nothing to do with spotlights, a star because she steadied herself and refused to let the past be treated like rumor. She has become, in the eyes of many, a symbol of endurance in an age that confuses speed with wisdom. And whether he says it or not, whether he ever speaks it into a camera, the way his face changes when her name floats into a room tells its own story. He, too, is now a mirror for those who learned the lesson late and refuse to forget it. So tell me, dear viewers, was she right to hold fast to a love that once gave her life its clearest color, or should she have walked away the moment the world insisted she should? Did he wait too long to admit what the quiet had been saying? I want to know what you believe, what parts of this story reached you and which parts you would have written differently. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice is what keeps this conversation alive. And if you want more of the truths that hide behind the glitter, more of the human ache and hope inside famous names, make sure you're subscribed to Turkish series stars and that your notifications are on. We're here to bring you narratives that don't just inform but tug, remind, and sometimes heal. Thank you for spending this time with me, for listening with an open heart. Until the next video, take good care of yours, and goodbye for now.